entrepreneurial life not for everyone. And sometimes we just inflict pain on ourselves. And not everyone can even understand it. Why? They think that they already know everything and then they hit the wall.
What made you say, I'm going to go start my own businesses and I'm going to be an immigrant and do all these things? What pushed you in that direction? Like if you're speaking to all the immigrant founders out there today, what were the elements that pushed you in the direction you went in to go start your first company? As entrepreneurs, is there a different definition for a European founder than it is for an American founder? Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is great to have Vadim Rogovskiy with me today. He is the CEO and co-founder of 3D Look. He's a 3-time founder himself in general. He's also a multi-time angel and early stage investor, including currently with Geek Ventures, which is focused on European startups moving to the United States. Vadim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So one of the key questions that I really like to kick things off with in many cases is this podcast is all about what does it mean to be an excellent entrepreneur? What does excellence look like? But to even understand that, the first question is, how do you define excellence? So when I ask you to think through, what is your individual and personal definition of an excellent entrepreneur? What does that mean to you as an individual?
A great question. If it's just one characteristic, I would start from always being curious and open to new knowledge. So basically, always learning. A lot of entrepreneurs, they just don't do that. At some point of time, they start being humble. They think that they already know everything, and then they hit the wall. So I think always learning, knowing your strengths, be persistent, and invest in people around you. But I think, it sounds really basic, but I think very few people actually do it.
Why do you think that's the case, right? You met a lot of really good entrepreneurs and you obviously invest in a pretty good number on a regular basis. Why do you think so few people have that level of curiosity, or why do they maybe lose that level of curiosity?
I think many people have these traits or these characteristics at some point of time during some period in their life. But what I've been observing during, let's say, 15 years of my active entrepreneurial and investor career is that consistency is very rare. I forgot to say consistency, maybe not even persistence, consistency. Consistency is rare. It's very rare, fortunately, for a lot of entrepreneurs and investors to consistently keep all these characteristics in place because it's easier to start learning something, to start working on different things, improving them. But then people actually, they lose this attention, they lose this focus. They basically go back to mediocrity. So this consistency, I would say, is very rare. Not the fact that people do these things, but the fact that they have to do it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I admire people who actually are excellent during their entire entrepreneurial careers.
Do you think people are you born with that? Is that innate? You think to certain entrepreneurs, the really good ones, or can you train yourself to be that way?
Sure, there is a never-ending debate, whether people are born to be entrepreneurs or they just basically can learn how to be entrepreneurs. But I think my opinion is that you have to be born to be a really great entrepreneur, really excellent one. And I'm not talking about just being on headlines of TechCrunch, running unicorns, etc. But I'm just saying consistently deliver results and just not stopping, and basically with every new company going extra mile, right, on a different scale, right? And I think in order to be a great entrepreneur, you have to be born with that, but nevertheless, if someone wants to be an entrepreneur and if he wasn't born with some characteristics, I think still it's totally possible to become an entrepreneur, or maybe just not great entrepreneur, but still run a company and be happy with it.
So when you think through, we're kind of jumping ahead in some ways, but when you think through your investments that you make at Geek Ventures or just your investments you make in general, how do you identify those entrepreneurs you think have that level of excellence, right? Because every entrepreneur who's coming to the table and starting a company and thinks they can raise money to go build the company of their dreams that's going to change the world, they clearly think they're super curious and they have a new level of interests, or they are more curious or more thoughtful than everyone else in a level of consistency. How do you figure out whether they actually do or don't? Like, what are the characteristics you really look for? Well, so presumably you want to invest in only excellent entrepreneurs, right? That is presumably the goal. Is like, I want to invest in entrepreneurs who are fantastic. Given that, how do you identify, is someone actually excellent if the definition of excellence is curiosity and consistency?
We don't do anything unique in this regard. I think we very, very rarely invest. It's also related to my personal investments as an angel. We very rarely invest just on the spot, like very quickly after a few calls with the founder. We try not to follow FOMO, etc. But so we try to just build a relationship with the founder and basically observe how she or he acts over time. Just again, look at consistency and look at, what kinds of reports she's gonna send us. If she commits to something, actually, like, does she deliver on this? Or if not, how she articulates it. All these kind of things, right? So we observe, and I think, of course, it's not enough to observe it for 3-6 months, but this it's something, and usually we see that something is off even within the first months, and this helps us to understand, first of all, this consistency, this ability to deliver consistently. Communication skills, super important, because I think the founder and CEO, first of all, should be great communicator, preacher, to preach different things over and over again, internally and externally. Just a good, nice human being. Everything else, of course, we look at obvious things, like we don't want to see red flags in terms of broken cap table or some toxic investors or blah, blah, blah. But these are obvious things. But in terms of the founder and the CEO, this is the main person we look at, and we want to understand that this person is like fits this criteria, so she can quickly change something, she can quickly pivot if something goes wrong, because it will likely go wrong. But if you pick the right founder, she will do everything she can in order to still save the company and grow further.
So you currently live in New York. You've spent time living in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. But you're also originally from Ukraine in Europe. Different cultures define excellence. When you think through that, as entrepreneurs, is there a different definition for a European founder than it is for an American founder? Or is it always sort of the same? Is it still just, I want to keep learning and being consistent? Or is it more than that? Is there sort of a different goal that European versus American founders shoot for?
Look for immigrant founders because we feel them, we understand them. And we understand that immigrants have to they're not born here, so that's why they have to go extra mile all the time, especially in the beginning, even to build their comfort zone in the US, in order to perform. And in the first few years since they moved here, they have to go through, just do lots of things that Native Americans, people like second generation Americans, they don't even understand. They don't even know about these problems, right? And also, this is a special mentality. If a person is an immigrant, maybe like 1% of all human beings are ready to just take their stuff and basically go to another country with their family and just build their life there. And I think great things like new countries were discovered because of the immigrants. Even in Ukraine, there was war. There's not good there, but the majority of people still stay because they cannot even, lots of our friends stay because they cannot even grasp how it's even possible to go and live in another country. So having said that, being an immigrant is a pretty rare mindset, skill set, etc., and strategy. And I think it fits very well into entrepreneurial mindset, and it already has been proven by lots of immigrants who created some of the greatest companies, some of the greatest tech companies.
Are there any stats? I know there are stats, but I don't know if you know off the top of your head about the percentage of successfully exited startups that are founded by one or more immigrant founders.
I don't know, unfortunately, off the top of my head. And what I know about is there is a report related to unicorn companies. And it's a bit fishy because unicorns of 2021 and unicorns of 2024 are totally different reality, totally different thing. So, but at least there is some benchmark, and I do it at closer to half of all unicorns in the US were created with at least one immigrant co-founder. So, which is crazy.
It is crazy, but doesn't shock me in the slightest. I mean, do you think there's a different mentality to be willing to pick up and leave everything that you're comfortable with and move to a new country, learn a new culture, build? It's definitely difficult. Do you think there's a different mindset is there a different sort of mindset from a very capitalist sort of American mindset versus a European one? Or are they all, when it comes to being an entrepreneur and a founder, at least in the tech space, are they all pretty much the same when it's like, I want to build a successful company, and maybe I define success as having a highly valued exit, right? Financially highly valued exit. Is that the goal you think, I mean, certainly as an investor, I presume that's your goal, but is that the goal that you find for founders that you invest in? In Europe, it's harder to raise money in many cases. So it sort of caps the outcome in your upside that you might get, but it doesn't mean, so maybe does that change, or is that a different mindset for what you want your outcome to actually be? In other words, like in the US, it's like, I want to go public someday or get acquired for a lot of money. And that tends to be sort of a very capitalistic, but focused goal. And of course, deep that is, you can sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. It implies you a product that's really good, that people love and makes a high value difference. But that isn't always the goal that everyone goes for. And it doesn't need to be, right? It doesn't, to be a great entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be, I want a financially successful exit. It can be other things. And I just don't know, is there a different mindset with some European founders versus American ones, or at least with the folks you deal with, it's all the same?
Yeah, actually, for us, not necessarily European founders. We started with the notion. Yeah, we started with this notion like with immigrants. We want to support immigrants from any country in the world who come to the US, and we're not born here. So now we have founders from all over the world. Of course, like maybe 25% of our portfolios to Ukrainian founders, but other than that, they're from everywhere. I would say so. I mean, in terms of your question, I don't think there are any sharp differences in terms of expectations. And I think great founders, they do not really prioritize financial outcomes so much. They really love building stuff, and they cannot not build. They cannot say no to build. And I think it's also the common trait of all excellent founders. They're born to build. What I also see that we invested in some founders, but because we didn't require people to already relocate to the US. Because especially at first, we were investing in founders who were in the process of relocating, or they were just traveling to the US for trade shows, etc. once in a while. But they were committed to this market, and they promised us to move here. But some of them didn't move because of different reasons, and they stayed. Especially people who stayed in very comfortable and warm countries like Portugal, they didn't actually they didn't grow so much comparing to folks who just boom, they just took their stuff, their kids, etc., and just moved to the US to build their lives. It's not a coincidence. We have more data now that shows that really, I mean, people who stay in a comfort zone and not ready to finally make this step to go to the market where you're building your company, also are not ready to get themselves out of the comfort zone in a business. Because in a business, you also have lots of comfort zones. You maybe have mediocre people in your leadership team, and you need to step out of your comfort zone and replace them. You have a mediocre part of your product that you need to basically just remove and to build a new one. But I think my opinion is, if they are unable to step out of the comfort zone in the immigration sense, then likely they're not going to step out of the comfort zone to change something if they cannot change something in their life, they will do whatever they can to not change something in their company.
So just to reiterate that, so basically you're saying at this point you have enough evidence to show that if you're investing in an overseas founder or an immigrant founder, they need to be committed to basically being that immigrant. Come to the US, bring your family, move here, do it. And if you don't, you will cap your upside.
Yes. Oh, yeah. 100%. You basically just, if you don't, then don't raise venture capital. Build a good business. Live a comfortable, healthy life. without ups and downs. And entrepreneurial life, not for everyone. And sometimes we just basically inflict pain on ourselves. And not everyone can even understand it. Why? But different breed of people.
Is there a comp for U.S. founders? What I mean by that is like, okay, well, an immigrant founder being willing to move the U.S. to you is a very clear signal. Are you really serious? Are you going to have a higher chance of building something successful? For founders that are already in the United States, is there a comp that you would look for to say, hey, this is the threshold that you need to hit or achieve to prove that you're really, you are in it and have a higher chance of a great outcome?
I think maybe some obvious thing. I mean, nothing super special here. I think, no, just really kind of look at obvious things. I think, like one thing that we observed over the last 2.5 years, I've been doing that is, and again, it's related to stress resilience and to consistency. Some people just drop the ball when something happened in their family. I mean, yeah, when the war in Ukraine started, some Ukrainian founders just got even more motivated. They started to really crush it. No one could stop them. And we have one of our best companies in the portfolio. Actually, it's one of the examples. It's Ukrainian founder who went from Lviv to Austin in Texas, lived there with his family. He's crushing it. But there are some founders who actually they dropped the ball, and I totally understand it's a hard topic. I cannot blame them at all. But just shit happens, big shit happens, and they were not stress resilient enough and they lost time, and that's why when they lost 3 months or 4 months, 5 months, they lost the fundraising window. Like they lost because it's all about timing, and then they had problems to raise money. So I would say for us, again, we go back to consistency. Like whatever happens, regardless of what happens in the world, it should be his passion and his mission. We'll look for missionaries, not for mercenaries.
That's really putting it. Can you test for that consistency and that resilience? Like, because once again, everybody who comes to you and pitches you, I'm sure saying, I'm super dedicated to this topic. I want to go build this. Is there a way to test to see like how committed are you really to building this? And you're just going to run through walls.
Definitely, we invest very early, so founders are the main area where we do due diligence, and we look at their prior companies, we look at their prior experiences. When we can do some background check, we do it. Like maybe we know someone, maybe we know ex co-founder of this person, or maybe we know ex employee. Yeah, we try to talk to understand. Yeah, I mean, we can take time. As I said, we can observe, we can build relationship, we can observe, we can basically observe how founder behaves within a month or 2 or 3. But we cannot wait for a year, right? Because then the round will be closed, and we'll have to invest in a much higher valuation if everything goes well. If everything goes not well, then we won't even invest. So we cannot wait for so long. And within this month or 2 months, not enough time to draw some conclusions. However, often in 50% of cases, it's enough. In other 50% of cases, then we later, a few times we realize probably if we go back in time, we wouldn't invest in this founder. Of course, we have such founders in the portfolio, but that's okay. I think it's nature of our business.
When you think through, so going back to your own history for a little bit, when you think through yourself as a founder, an entrepreneur, you're growing up in Ukraine, and you're going to, what made you decide I'm going to go? I don't know if that was the culture in Ukraine to go start businesses, or your parents who are entrepreneurs. What made you say I'm going to go start my own businesses and I'm going to be an immigrant and do all these things? What pushed you in that direction? Like if you're speaking to all the immigrant founders out there today, what were the elements that pushed you in the direction you went in to go start your first company?
Yeah, I mean, my parents they haven't been entrepreneurs. Actually, my mother is she's piano teacher, and my father had a career in mostly in the telecom. He was on the marketing side. He was like, no, he in some of time he was pretty high in the hierarchy in some of the biggest telecom operators in Ukraine. But he tried to be entrepreneur, but it was not his like. I mean, he failed a few times, but he built a pretty good career. Yeah, and so until I was like 18 or something, when I started to do some like first experiments, some entrepreneurial small ventures. I I've never thought that I never dreamt. I was never dreaming about being an entrepreneur when I was at school. Right? It was just I always wanted to follow my father's steps to be a big manager, like whatever VP something. Right? And then it changed when I tried to work for someone a few times, and I was fired after 2 or 3 months because I saw so many problems. I saw so many things I could improve, and I was like, I was, yeah, I was not the easiest person to manage. And I started, well, decided, what do I just, it was just fun. It was hobby at first. Like, what if I try to build a website? What if I try to build a mobile app? Um, like mobile gaming app for Facebook or something, right? And there, I was not technical, so I tried something myself, but I had to hire some people like as freelancers, and so I started getting some managerial skills pretty early. So yeah, it started just without any grand vision, thinking super big, etc. But no, it started just I had fun, and I couldn't stop doing that.
Mm-hmm. What did people say in your community or to your parents or your friends? Or like, wait, Vadim is becoming an entrepreneur. Why is me going to university? Or maybe you did. Or like, why is me doing all the sort of the normal standard things? Like, what made you different in that sense? Or was it, or did you care? You're just like, I don't care. I'm doing what I enjoy and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, or the biggest reason why for a long time I wanted to go and live in the US from Ukraine, because although I love my home country, but entrepreneurship is not the most respected, like and privileged kind of, I would say, career there, unfortunately. And yeah, that's why many people just they didn't understand it. For me, I just didn't care at all. I mean, it didn't bother me. Yeah, I was just super curious. Yeah, I didn't have any clear financial goals or something. I just had fun, and only later I understood. Wow, actually, this is what I can do for a living, and actually, I don't want to do anything else. So I needed maybe a few years to get to the point. Maybe when I was 20, I realized, yeah, that's what I want. And then, yeah, I graduated from university in business and management as my major, but at the same time, I already had, by the time I graduated, I was full speed building my first company. And before that, I had a lot of small experiments with different levels of success.
And what then led you? So you're getting building this company out of university. What then made you take the leap? Did you move to the US right then, or did it take some time? How did those companies go? Walk me through just really briefly through kind of your kind of career entrepreneurial history.
Yeah, it took some time. So yeah, I mean, to take my family and move here, like to properly kind of relocate 100%, sell everything I had in Ukraine, etc. We only did it 2 years ago, right? If I would do, because before that I've been spending a lot of time here, but my family usually stayed in the Ukraine, so technically wasn't really living here full time. So if I do just one advice, if I had a chance to give one piece of advice to myself, like 10 years ago, like to myself, 25 years old, I would say, just do it. Just move to the US immediately, and just don't like try to live between two countries, because obviously there was a reason behind it. I was in a comfort zone. In Ukraine, if you make money in the US but live in Ukraine, the life is awesome. And it's like, I mean, I was driving the best cars. I wasn't looking at prices anywhere. I was traveling when I wanted, etc. When I was already, like, when I was 23, I took all my family to Greece. Like, it started pretty early. And of course, and no one told me, like, hey, you have to actually. I didn't have a mentor who would tell me you just need to just throw it, all this shit away and just go to the US. No, and yeah, because, and I probably, and then yeah, but if I go back in time, I would do that. But, and I'm sure that probably I would then I would build bigger companies by this point, right? But still I'm happy that we moved. I love living here, but yeah, I would probably do it a bit earlier. But going back to my entrepreneurial career.
You live in New York City now. It's obviously far more expensive than Ukraine. And you think that's a worthwhile trade-off, right? So even though you're probably living in a much smaller apartment or things like that versus the biggest house in Ukraine and driving the fanciest cars, you still think that is a worthwhile trade-off, at least for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, of course. Maybe 10 years ago, I would think differently if I move, because maybe I think I'm calm now and I'm in harmony now because I had a lot of fun. I tried lots of expensive things when I was when I was younger, and I'm like, now that's okay. After yes, maybe that's the reason. Maybe if I did it 10 years ago, I would be hungry to basically try some luxury. Like I don't know. But now I'm totally okay. But yeah, it's totally this trade off is totally worth for me. Because by kind of lowering my like standard of living at least, like, I mean, like temporarily, I get access to the smartest and the most successful people in the world in every industry. So my learning curve can already accelerated tremendously in some areas. Either it's investing or building or both. And I think this is the main thing in terms of investment in myself. This is the best, one of the best decisions I ever made.
You probably just answered the question I was going to ask next, but maybe restate it, which is sort of, okay, so what about the US makes it a place where you feel like entrepreneurs, immigrant entrepreneurs should move to their lives, do all those things? What about it in the United States, or even not just the United States, I guess maybe New York or the Bay Area? Or what is it about these locations where you're like, if you want this, uproot your entire life, live in a smaller apartment and house than you can afford elsewhere? Why do that? Like, what is it about being in those locations that you think it's worthwhile?
Yeah, I think it's not the US in general. You're absolutely right. It's more like, for me, it's New York, not even Bay Area, New York, because New York for me is like the capital of entrepreneurship, density, very high density of successful people in a square mile, and not even successful, like smart people. And I mean, because yeah, it's like a threshold. Only like very tiny percent of people in the world can not only come to New York but stay here. It's like a filter. Yeah, I've been discussing it with my wife recently. That's why you don't actually meet some kind of people that you don't understand actually what are they doing. How you don't meet mediocre people here. Yeah, you meet people who excel in some areas, right? And or some people inherited a lot of money, but still maybe I don't know. Still they have some. Maybe you understand why they're here, right? But you don't just meet people and understand like what do they do and how do they actually survive here? Yeah. So this is a big filter. If used properly, this can lead to just much faster learning curve, much faster self development, and then ultimately success. There is a popular kind of word, engineering serendipity. So I think it's all about it's perfectly said about New York.
Yeah, no, it's a great way of putting it. I mean, I think so, to kind of restate that, right? The ability to accelerate your learning and your education is predicated on meeting and involving yourself and sort of testing yourself probably against the best and brightest, right? That exchange of ideas is richer because you're also with all the other people who are testing themselves. I mean, that was so walk me through. Okay, so that was your first company. You end up coming to the US during that company or after that company was built?
So I mean, like long story short, I had so my first company I started like 2010, and I sold it in 2014, and then but at that time I started to build my second one until I sold the first one, because it was the same industry, ag tech, but a bit different kind of vertical. So my first company was helping businesses to run social media campaigns effectively, and my second company was doing mobile app user acquisition and monetization. And basically, so I started my second company, and at that time when I started my second company in 2012, I came to the US the first time because I was US market was at first especially key market for me. I was going to biggest trade shows here every year. Basically, I was coming to the Bay Area, to New York every few months for a few weeks. And then, I only started to come. I started just to spend more time here as soon as I started my third company through the look, and I lived in the Bay Area for almost a year when I went through Boost VC Accelerator. It's accelerator founded by Adam Draper. It was 2017. So yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah. So Vadim, so you were telling me about how like you it sounded like you started your second company while you were still running the first one. Why did you do that? It sounds like a bad way to do things if you want your first company to be successful.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a good point because in my life I did like many times I did things in an unconventional way, right? Yeah, just because I wanted it, right? Like running two companies at the same time, or running a company and then trying to launch a startup accelerator, and or studying in the university, running a company, and working on a full-time role in a software outsourcing company, right? It was not, I didn't. These are the things that people typically didn't do, right? And I did it with different levels of success, but that's why, right? So, why I started second company, because at the time already, it started, the same team was kind of building the product for my next company, right? Okay. This is important, right? So basically, yeah, it was like the same team, two products. So, and the newer one, I carved it out later into the second company. So technically, it was the first company at center. It had some traction in Ukraine and Russia, in Eastern Europe, but it didn't fly outside of that market. And I didn't even at that time I was trying to do everything right from Ukraine, from Europe. We started to experiment with mobile advertising, mobile ads, etc. And it started to go really well, but it was totally. And then I realized, well, it's a different company because it's totally different target audience. Instead of SMBs, it's going to be game developers, etc. And I basically carved it out into a new company. It was, I didn't plan this. And then at that point, I really realized that, well, at Central probably we're going to, it's just going to be just small exit, which is eventually it was okay. But I said, no, I'm going to focus on the next one. So I already realized that the first one, and I also recommend that founders treat their companies as if they are investors, as if it's their portfolio. Like, look at your bet, look at your odds of success, look at your 100%. Ultimate value you're going to extract. And if you see that, well, actually, market has changed, or valuations has changed on the market, or their market is going to last for a few more years, just okay, maybe you don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Do something else in parallel. Conventional thinking says, no, it's wrong because you have investors, you have everything, and you just have to stick to one. I think it's wrong. I think because investors have the portfolio, why founders shouldn't have the portfolio, right?
In that sense, I totally agree. It's sort of an unfair way of doing it. Yeah. But I would also push back, right? You sort of said, look, the real success metrics for people are, and what entrepreneurial excellence is consistency and sticking with it, right? And so you're sort of saying the opposite here. You're like, well, if a company's not quite going as well as it should, jump to the next thing, because you shouldn't waste your life on something that's unsuccessful.
Well, that's a bit of the point. The question is when to jump. This is the more art than science. Do you stick to it forever? Very, very good point. And I think you have to stick to it for a very long time if you believe that you can succeed here. Then you don't quit. You don't quit regardless. Until you starve, right? You just don't quit. I had this experience, right? But if you already understand, because some people often do mistakes when they love their company too much. They don't they don't listen to anyone. They just don't read reports. Don't speak to other people, other founders. And they become very narrow-minded, and they lose it eventually because they just it's not gonna go anywhere regardless of what they do. It's basically they pick wrong mountain. I think in the first example, I'm gonna pick not the wrong mountain, but not the very best one. And I just realized, well, regardless of what I do, regardless of what level of effort I invest, I will basically only improve it by some marginal figure. And I'm like, okay, but this is but I discovered some high growth element in my company. I'm like, wow, this thing I want to stick to. So probably this is the difference. I hope I answered your question.
Look, it makes total sense to me. It's very similar to my current situation. A company I started 4 years ago. We raised $10 million from VCs. And we found one part of our business that was very successful, and that essentially spun out. And we're still focusing on the same idea, but in a different way that's more successful and more focused and is providing more value. So I totally get it. So walk me through really quickly. So you're mentioning, if you're open to talking about it, this second company, you grew it to a really big revenue multiple, but then it didn't really succeed in sort of the conventional sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because my first company was totally bootstrap. I was solo founder there. I raised one angel check, but in fact it was totally from my ex boss, but it was totally bootstrap. The second company, I also very early on, because my ex boss knew that I started the second one, he decided to buy a stake in my second company. So it was my very early secondaries, I would say, right? Then I started to Then I've been like bootstrapping it for like until 2015, like for 2-3 years. We were profitable, growing well, but not crazy well according to VC standards. Maybe like 100% a year, but not 3x or something, right? But it was good. It was profitable. I thought that's the success, right? And then it was like, I don't know, 23, 24, 25. And then basically then one VC was really kind of going after me and trying to convince me to take their money. I'm like, why do I need your money? I don't need. But then they say, hey, there is this because I also didn't know that when you raise money from VC, some portion can be cash in, some portion can be cash out, like real secondary. I'm like, oh, okay, well, now we're talking. Well, that's interesting. And at first they said, okay, 25% second cash out, 75% cash in. I'm like, maybe let's do 50-50 of the round. And and we did it. And I was like, okay, that was the motivation for me to take the money. But we shouldn't have done it actually. And I shouldn't, because as soon as I raised that money, I started to like, okay, let's grow by all means. Let's just do whatever we can to grow 2-3x a year in order to sell it. But at tech industry at that point was not a good place to play typicalization game, because the revenue multipliers were going down. Public markets, these companies were scrutinized. But it was a great market to just make money. But I started just to basically grow by all costs, reinvest everything in my company. Then we started to burn cash because we had to invest more and more in the growth. And then this game just didn't work out because at some point of time the market started to really crash. A lot of advertisers just basically turned off mobile ads as one of their not even mobile ads, cost per install. Like we basically were promoting mobile apps, right? And they stopped to buy installs. At some point of time, it was crazy, and they didn't even abandon us; they abandoned the entire channel. And it was bad. And at some point of time, we had an offer. We were in the process of due diligence with the buyer, and then something happened with the buyer's business and fell apart. And the deal fell apart. And at the time, I realized, okay, it's the best spiral. I'll go build my next company. So I appointed a different CEO at Clicky, but eventually in a few years, and I stayed as a chairman. I was more focused on selling the company, but it didn't work out. But again, I realized it's not gonna. If I stayed for 2 more years there, the same outcome, probably 99%. I'm confident, but I spent those 2 years to already get 3D look of the ground.
And so I want to kind of skipping over 3D look for a little bit. I know you're also thinking about nowadays doing sort of a bit of like a roll up and thinking, you're like, yeah, why don't I buy companies instead of doing the early days sort of 0 to 1? I want to go build companies sort of 1 to 10. Given that thesis that you have, which makes a lot of sense, what are the qualities you look for in a business? What are the qualities you think you're going to bring to the table that will help those companies be successful? So if you're advising other people as founders, maybe they're still running their own companies. Instead, they've made it from 0 to 1, and now they need to go from 1 to 10. What are the steps they need to take? What are the things you think you will bring to the table to these companies you want to purchase that will help them get to a valuable, excellent outcome?
I think my 3D look experience helped me a lot to realize this, because we were at some point of time, So I financed the company in the beginning. Then we started to raise money because we had to invest a lot in R&D, in data collection, in all this, also to employ very expensive computer vision, deep learning, 3D engineers, etc. For a long time before we even had first revenue. We were for 4 years just building, experimenting. And so we raised 16 million in total, including 10 million Series A. And some point of time, we were like, in our first year, we grew 8x. Like, so we did my Series A was like oversubscribed, and like I raised it in like 4 months entirely, like with due diligence, etc. But then we realized that's it. We kind of we hit the ceiling because we're still very new, very early, very innovative. And we managed to sell to the innovators, but that's it. Now we have to wait. And but I raised a lot of money and I had to okay, so there was some inertia and we spent a lot of money trying to basically push this huge vehicle, which is the market, and we were too small to push it. So eventually we just spend a lot of money, we shouldn't spend it, right? Then I realized, and it's good that I realized it was not too late that I realized, okay, just let's stop playing this game. Let's stop playing VC backed game, right? We just let's get to break even, and okay, we stay as a cool AI software business doing cool things, but let's forget about these metrics, because as soon as you stop actually trying to appeal to VCs, you stop rushing, and when you rush, you always do mistakes. Like, well, let's not rush. I don't care if we grow how many X this year, and because and then so now you look as we're completely off this VC track, which is okay, but I had to change a lot in my mentality. Of course, when you change it, you need to change all the things. I mean, even in the work chart, in the way how decisions are made, what is prioritized, and I changed a lot, and I changed my ego, fixed some things, right, and then I realized, well, there are many people like myself actually in the same situation. I was lucky because we still managed to get the company to the proper ground. And we're almost at the break even now, but I'm gonna be there maybe in a few months. But a lot of startups they are too far away from break even, and they need someone to save them. And I want basically to help them. This is just on a very high level.
Well, how are you going to come in though? Like, let's pretend they sell to you, or let's pretend they don't. What advice would you give those founders on what they can do to get themselves to break even, to build successful businesses without raising more cash? Like, what are the tools, tips, and tricks that you bring to the table, or that you think they should try to implement themselves if they're not going to sell to you, to achieve a quality outcome despite the challenging market?
Well, I think the idea is that my thesis is basically when a company the most messy and hard and high risk zone is between 0 and 1 million in ARR. That's when you can spend 3 for 5 years. A lot of
How do you define? To be clear, how do you define 0 to 1 then? What's your
So for me, it's 0 to 1 million in ARR. This is the most messy zone. This is the most messy zone, the most high risk zone, and you can spend 3 for 5 years to get there. I've been there 3 times, and I want to skip. My point is to compress the timeline, to skip it, to get immediately to 1. But then I want to find a startup that got there, but founders hit the ceiling, unable to grow, or they think they're unable to grow further, either because they're burned out, exhausted, seen it a lot, or they just get technical, they never sold to enterprise, they don't feel enough confidence to sell to enterprise. I can sell to enterprise, I can build a team to sell to enterprise. So this is the point, to find a company with an early product market fit in some niche, could be SMB, that can get, and if I can get it to, if I can get it up market without a lot of investment in product development, this could be a perfect scenario. And I can come in as an advisor first, because it's a big question now. When is the right time to come in? If you come in too late, when founders are desperate, probably too late because they already made some irreversible mistakes, right, in decision. If you come too early, they're like, I'm raising my Series B now, I'm speaking to Sequoia, okay, I'm gonna wait. So somewhere in the middle between these two zones.
Okay. And so is there any specific activity? I get why when you'd want to purchase that, it makes sense. But what do you put in place? Once again, to be really specific, what do you come in? What are you going to fix? What do you change about how they run their business?
Well, you will be surprised, but what I see now, I started to actively talk to companies a few months ago. I see also very often they have just biases. It's not going to work. I'm not clear. Why did you sell to enterprise in our industry? No. Why? Oh, we just didn't have time. I'm like, okay. Or like, why you didn't do this? Oh, it's not gonna work. I'm like, probably you're wrong. So just lots of things that people are very strong-minded about, which is not the case. And I was surprised how obvious these things are. And on a cost side, I'm not afraid of startups burning cash, because even in my company in 3D Look, we were 70 plus at some point. Now we're 20 and doing much better, much better. And I went through this, and we didn't lose. We didn't have any voluntary attrition. We didn't lose a single person. So when I come in, I also understand when the costs are bloated, when the company has to be right sized, just to run this more efficiently. So it's only based on a practical experience I've gained. Yeah.
And so that makes sense then. What to kind of round it out, one of the questions I like to ask everybody on the show is, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to every single founder that's out there to achieve excellence, however you want to define it again, sort of the way maybe you have defined it when we started, what is that piece of advice you would give to everyone?
Engineer serendipity as often as you can. What do I mean by that? Get accepted to entrepreneurial clubs, communities, chapters, go to conferences, go to places where you can find diverse people. It's very important to get outside of the bubble. So engineer serendipity by meeting as many people as you can in expected and unexpected circumstances, and have clear goals what you're looking for, right? So I think this is maybe sounds very, 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 very basic, but I think many people just don't do it.
So sorry, is the advice then get out and meet as many people as you possibly can? Is essentially the advice?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to meet people because I want to build a company, or I want to meet I want to get better at marketing or engineer.
Meet as many people as you can with a clear one-liner, with a clear goal. What are you looking for? Because of course, if you cannot formulate it, you can meet millions of people and not gonna get anything out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is great. Vadim, how can folks find you if they want to learn more about Geek Ventures, they want to learn more about you, your companies, or the companies you might want to buy? Where do folks find you and get in touch?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It's my main social media. Still trying to do the same on Twitter, but not there yet. So LinkedIn. And my email is Vadim at geek.vc. So happy to also happy to chat with folks there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the time. I sincerely appreciate it. This is for me a good learning about kind of how certainly people from overseas and immigrants, but also just generally some of the keys to success as an excellent entrepreneur. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.